Hi everyone, my name is Tom Cuthbertson. I'm your instructor for this class. I'm making this video so that you can sort of see my face, but also so that we can go over the first major paper assignment. I want to make some points and try and explain some more details about what I'm asking you to do. So here's the assignment sheet. Let me go over some main points on this. Please read this on your own carefully, but let me underline a few crucial things about it. So the purpose of this paper is to write a narrative essay in response to one claim from one of the articles from your English 111 reader that we will have read by the time of the due date of the first draft. A couple of these articles, again, are left over from seated class that I've taught many times before. So if you want to do the Thoreau essay, you still may. The Sedaris essay is not in your book, but if there are any David Sedaris fans out there, let me know. We'll see what we can do. Otherwise, your choices are primarily going to be Orwell, Douglas, White, and Steinem. There may be a few others that get added in later on. Now, let me explain first of all what I mean by you're writing in response to one claim from one of the articles in your reader. You're not really writing the main part of this paper about the article you're going to begin with. The main body of your essay should be your own personal narrative. Your narrative will come in response to a particular lesson or a theme that you find in the article you choose to begin or introduce your paper with. So what the first paragraph is basically going to be is you will find a theme in the article of your choosing. You'll probably quote that article. You'll explain the theme for a few minutes, and then you're going to pivot from that essay. You're going to write your own narrative about your own life, dealing with the lesson or theme that you find. So maybe if I show some potential lessons from these essays, that might make more sense. So if we think about the four articles that we have read these first 2 weeks, or maybe you will read a couple of them yet to come, if we think of Douglas's learning to read and write, there are certain themes that he underscores or tries to reiterate through the course of his article. Some of them are his main or his most important themes. Other ones might be subsidiary themes, but they still might be useful for your paper. So one of the things he notes is kind of a weird episode toward the last third or so of his essay, where he acknowledges that learning about who he is and his own condition was kind of painful. You may remember that episode from the essay. You might think of a phase in your life where you either responded similarly, or maybe you responded to the fact that however painful knowledge may be, it's always preferable to know than to not know, right? In other words, you take this claim and then you'd write your own narrative using your own life experience, either pro or con, to try and prove or disprove the principle. So you might want to prove or disprove this. Another thing that he says or acknowledges in the beginning of his essay is that people have to learn to be bad, that they have a sort of general goodness, he thinks, but that can be educated out of that. He talks about his master's wife, who was initially very good to her, but she had to be taught to be sort of mean and spiteful to him. You could write an essay where you agree or disagree with this principle, and you, once again, use your own life experience to try and prove or disprove that. So the body of this initial paper is actually your own narrative explaining your own life story in some ways. And I don't mean a complete life story. I mean one incident, maybe two at the most, where you explain something that happened to you and why you feel that particular incident taught you something important, dealing loosely with the theme that comes from the essay you find in our reading so far. You're going to build your own thesis and argument in response to the author you use, as I note here, and then organize your paper around your claim. So it's that lesson that you are trying to prove that's going to determine what the body of your paper looks like. And as I said, the body of your paper should be a story that you use as evidence to try and prove or disprove the claim that begins your paper. So, using your narrative to describe and explain your idea concerning the issue at hand. Now, Thesis. Remember, in contrast to a short story, your narrative essay is going to need to work to prove a point. So you're not just telling a narrative, you are using that narrative to illustrate a claim, an argument, or a thesis, is what I would call it. The paper needs a strong thesis to focus your argument. I assign the reading on strong thesis statements, or actually weak thesis statements that you need to improve. So hopefully dealing with that activity will give you a slightly better idea of what it means to have a strong thesis. Think about that as you're working on this paper. Again, that's going to be the central claim or the main argument of your paper, and your narrative is going to have to try and help illustrate that. The main things that are going to be important for this paper: a clear, well-argued thesis. That is, the paper has a good, strong argument that you're trying to prove or disprove, and that claim can be expressed in one well-defined, well-articulated sentence. Usually the thesis statement is like the last sentence of the introduction. You need to have ample use of supporting evidence, in this case a narrative that supports the argument you're making. You need logical connections between the evidence and the argument you're making. And what I mean by here is you should not just tell a story, you should tell a story, and while you're telling the story, also provide commentary as to what the story means. In other words, show me why the narrative you're telling me proves the point you think you are making. And you need to do that in a very explicit and clear way. Your paragraphs need to be well organized, and you'll need to write clear, coherent paragraphs, and your paper needs to be free of grammatical errors. Basically, the paper is set up to have a very particular kind of introduction strategy. And what I mean by this is what I referred to in the beginning. You're going to begin by quoting and referencing the lesson from the article that you're choosing here. Then you'll explain briefly what that lesson is in your own words, why you think it's important, and then you'll transition from your author's claim to your own. That is to say, you need to make a logical progression from the idea of the author to your own thesis. And at the end of the first paragraph, the reader should have an idea of the direction or the argument that your paper is going to make. After the initial introduction, you rarely, or if ever, really want to make reference to the article. The body of the paper is reserved for your own narrative and your own story. Conclusion: you need to have a concluding paragraph that emphasizes your main claim. One other thing I want to point out related to this first paper assignment: if you check the lessons section of week 2, you will note there is a folder there that I've eloquently named Paper 1 Stuff. So if you find underneath the lessons that particular item and click the folder, you will find a number of different things that are there to help you write this paper. I'm going to go over some parts of these documents through the course of this week to give you more of an idea of this assignment. We'll talk about the sample essay. We'll talk a little bit more about the opening and what the thesis should look like. The other documents are there for you to read and to help you develop your own draft. Okay? And please look at these ahead of time. Like I said, I will refer back to them over the course of the week. That's all I want to go over in this video. As I said, I'll be adding more of these over the next few days, and we'll talk more about this paper. In the meantime, you can please look over the assignment sheet and the other materials that I've provided. If you have questions or things you want to ask me about potential subjects, then please send me an email or make a post in the discussion forum on questions for the instructor. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will be back in touch. Thanks.